Guys, I think everyone's looking at that first game going, you better be careful, because everybody knows North Dakota State, that is a legitimate football team. Everyone that brings them in for the first game of the year, between them and San Diego State, you tend to regret doing it. And obviously, this is a big one here, but it's also a big statement. If you can win that game, it appears to be at home, so that is good. Bryson, your thoughts on NDSU? Do you believe the Buffs will win that one?
I think they will. I think the biggest thing that gives this Buffs team an advantage heading into this season is a lot of what Anthony was mentioning, where you mentioned, they improved this offensive line across the board. Whether it was through the transfer portal, they got the number one overall recruit at the offensive line position out of high school coming into CU this year. So the offensive line is going to be better out the get-go. Shedeur is one of the most sacked quarterback, if not the most sacked quarterback in college football last year. Yep. So keeping him upright and healthy early on to start the season is going to be huge. North Dakota State, they're a powerhouse in their own right. I mean, every year it seems like they're winning their national championship or they're right there competing for it. But this is another level. I think people forget it didn't end great for CU last year, but man, did this team get off to a hot start. And at CU, with a lot of pressure, a lot of hype around this team, I think it's a tough environment for NDSU to come in and play. So I think that CU is going to come out 1-0.
I agree, man, but that is absolutely some must-see TV there. It's going to be a phenomenal football game. But let's just say for now, we all got the boys starting 1-0. Then they got two on the road, Nebraska and Colorado State. Obviously, the Rocky Mountain Showdown. That one's on the road, but it's also only up the road about an hour, not even actually from Boulder. So not too far of a road trip there. But between Nebraska and Colorado State, Anthony, he mentioned on the show, look, we should have at least been a bowl team. We lost so many games by a touchdown or less. We were right there, and we just couldn't get it done. USC is a perfect example. They should have beat Caleb Williams, and they didn't get that game down. But Colorado State is one of the games that they very well could have lost that they actually ended up winning. So, Anthony, looking at Nebraska and Colorado State, how do you see both of those ones faring for the team?
Man, I see a pretty easy win over Nebraska. I know they've been making improvements, and they will be coming back supposedly with a better roster than they have been the past couple of seasons. But this is a team that, Colorado has been dominating now for a little bit. I have no concerns about them beating Nebraska there. CSU, it could be an interesting game. I do think that Colorado is going to be much better than CSU this year. I think CSU has a little bit of a drop-off, but you have to remember this is a rebuilding program in their own right. And there's a lot of energy around that CSU football team right now. They very much feel like they're trending in the right direction. I mean, I don't see it being as close, but if they're not careful, if you win your first two games and you start getting a little cocky, you start getting a little full of yourself, I do believe that a CSU team, especially playing them on the road, could upset a Colorado team like this. And then you're sitting there 2-1, having to go play Baylor, and it's a much different feel to the season. Honestly, I'm a little bit more concerned for that CSU game. I just feel like with the rivalry there, you almost have to take out the team's, performance, their talent coming into it, because it's like a division rivalry game. It's going to play out just a little bit different than some of these other games, given just the pure emotion, the raw emotion, the energy that's going to be coming from both sides in this one.
I got to add to what you said, though, about Colorado State, man, because I am very high on Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, the quarterback over there for Colorado State. I've been on him since early last year, and I'm still absolutely on him. I think another offseason for him, he's going to be a problem. Do not be surprised if he is a top quarterback in that conference. But it's tough, man, because I agree with you on the 2-1 thing. I think no matter how you chop the cake here, they're probably going to drop one of these three. And I also can't see how they go 3-0. But here's the thing about Colorado State. Last year, I think they kind of got punched in the mouth because they thought they were up here, like you said. And really, Colorado State felt like we got nothing to lose. These guys get all the attention, all the hype, and they want to come in there and beat them. This time, I don't think the Buffaloes are going to make that mistake. And I expect Travis Hunter to be playing in the full entirety of the game for this one. I think they win that football game. But once again, I mean, hey, whatever the spread is, if it's Colorado State plus 17.5, you got to give me that every single time. So, yeah, hey, look, I'm going to say 3-0 through the first three. Anthony's going to go 2-1. Bryson, how you feeling?
I have them starting 3-0. I think that the next two games are going to be tough, like Anthony was saying. They're rivalry games. They're not going to be easy games to win. But I do think that CU is just overall more talented. I think that they're going to come in ready to play. Like you're saying, I think that they weren't expecting last year against CSU to be as close as it was. So I think that CU is going to be a little bit more prepared heading into the season.
Then you jump on over and you got Baylor at home, UCF on the road, and Kansas State at home. Anthony, we don't have to, we don't have time to go through the whole thing super deep, but on those 3 games, how do you see those faring out?
Man, this is a tough one. I could see them being 1-2 over the stretch. I mean, these are 3 really good football programs right here. And, I think that skills-wise, Colorado might have them beat in a couple of areas, but like I've been saying, these are teams they're not used to seeing. These are teams that, they play a different brand of football than they're used to in the Pac-12. So I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, kind of adjusting to the Big 12 brand of football. And I feel like it's going to happen over these 3 games. I mean, I could see them maybe beating Baylor and losing the next 2, really a combination of anything right there. Maybe they go 2-1. If they go 2-1 over the span, I would feel very confident for their chances making the playoffs, moving forward in the season. Honestly, I feel like much of the season comes down to these 3 games. It's your first 3 conference games. It's going to be some crazy competition there, really tough road environments. Luckily, they do play 2 of these games at home, which could give them a little bit more of that edge. But, man, this is going to be really tough football when you hit that September 21st mark.
I'll tell you what, man, Baylor at Colorado, you are damn lucky that you got them at Colorado, because I think if they had to go to Baylor, I would probably chalk that game up as a loss. I think it's a tough place to play. If you've ever been out there, it's in the middle of nowhere, folks, and it's just not very homey feeling. I think being in Boulder, big advantage for Colorado there. UCF, Coach Prime mentioned talking about this game that 25% of the roster is from Florida. He's like, so we actually feel like we might have kind of a home game there. Our boys get to go home, represent for their people. They don't really got to travel to get to the game. So it should be a lot of fun there. So I think that game obviously is a tough game, but I have them winning that game on the road at UCF for me. I think Kansas State of these is probably the toughest game, just following the road trip that just happened the week before with UCF. But Bryson, on these 3 games, man, what's their record?
Well, if CU is serious about being a playoff team, getting into that 12-team playoffs, it doesn't matter how tough a stretch like this is. You have to go 3-0. I don't know if they can, just because, like you guys have been saying, this is a tough stretch to go 3-0 on, especially going from Boulder to Florida back to Boulder. Like that's a tough 3-week stretch for these kids. I think the toughest one, like you said, is the last one against Kansas State. I don't think Baylor is that much of a competition with these guys. I think that they're going to blow them out in Boulder. UCF had been a very good program years ago. They were known as the national champion team by going undefeated that one season. Since then, they haven't been the same program. They've just been kind of mediocre as an overall football team the last few years. Kansas State, they've gotten better. They're getting better every year. So I think Kansas State's the toughest one, like you said, Riggs. So I have them going 2-1. But if they're a serious team about going to the playoffs, this is a stretch where you have to come out 3-0.
All right. I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm going to go 2-1 here as well. I'm going to jump on that train with you guys because it is tough to see how they don't drop one of these. But Bryson, I think you're right, man. If they sweep these 3, they absolutely are true playoff contenders if they can pull that off. But I have to give them a loss somewhere. So Bryson and I got them 5-1 in the first 6. Anthony got them 4-2. Then they are on the road at Arizona. Obviously a very good Arizona team, but they lost their head coach, got a new man in place there, got quite a few players moving on from the team. So obviously that's going to be a tough game though on the road in horrendous Tucson, Arizona. Shout out to my people. I absolutely hate that place. Then they're at home against Cincinnati and then on the road against the Texas Tech Red Raiders, which is always going to be a fun one. Bryson, looking at that 3 stretch, man, what's the record?
I have them coming out 3-0 in this one. And this is probably the second hardest 3-game stretch. I think the next one we're going to talk about is going to be the toughest one. But I think there's one of the tougher ones as well. Arizona, they seem to have CU's number. Even last season, CU was trying to make a push to get in that college football or get to a bowl game. And Arizona kind of stumbled that year. They did the Shador celebration in front of Shador, which was tough to see. But I think Arizona's a tough one. Cincinnati's far from where they were when they were a college football playoff team a few years ago. They're not the same program ever since they lost Desmond Ridder and a few other NFL guys, Sauce Gardner specifically. And then Texas Tech, they're kind of just there. Texas Tech has never really been an overly dominant, overly impressive football program to me. I think this is one where you're going to really see these new transfers, these new kids that CU brought in. They're going to show their worth, and they're going to get them into a really good spot down the stretch for a college football playoff spot. So I have them going 3-0. It's not going to be easy, but this is going to be where CU really impresses people.
Bryson has the boys at what is that? 8-1. Oh my Lord, going into that one. Anthony, are you with him on this 3-game stretch here, man?
Man, I do agree that is their second toughest, 3-game stretch of the season. And I do agree if they're really serious about being, a playoff football team, you at least have to win two out of 3 of these games. Probably go 3-0. I see them taking 2 out of 3. I just feel, I know Texas Tech, they might not be a fantastic program, but they're very competitive and they're going to show out and they're definitely going to compete, especially at home. Anytime you get to play in front of Texas, crowd, it's definitely going to be a very difficult for whatever visiting team's going in there. And I just look at that Arizona game, man. Like you guys have been saying, this team just has Colorado's number and had it for a while now. Yes, I know they lost some guys to new head coach going in there, but we know Arizona just produces talent, produces NFL players like crazy. I feel like we're going to see a really good freshman, sophomore class coming out of Arizona, a lot of young talent there. I'm excited to see, some of the changes, under the new coach, to see what the new program in Arizona looks like. Cincinnati, man, that's going to be a scary one. I do think it's a huge advantage playing them at home. I'd see Colorado winning that one. But, like you guys were saying, there's a ton of these players coming out of Cincinnati where I feel like even going into college, they're not, going to be the most highly scouted guys. They're not like these top 2, top 5 prospects. But when they leave Cincinnati, man, they are ready to take that next level, and they just crank out NFL athletes. So it's going to be interesting to see some of the talent they got there this year. Real good shot that they're going to drop at least one of those games.
Man, I feel you on the Cincinnati thing. I get what you're saying, but I agree with both of you. I think here that, at the end of the day, I think being in Boulder is just enough that, to me, that's a major letdown if you lose that game. Looking at the schedule, I don't think you can lose that game if you're going to make a college football playoff push. Anthony, I think you make a good point. You can't sleep on this football team, especially if you have to go to Texas to play them. But I'm with Bryson here, and I think that we're going to win that game. I think Arizona is the toughest game, even though they have the new head coach, whatever. Tucson, Arizona sucks. That stadium, they show out for their team. They love their football team. Just so you guys know, spoiler alert, there's nothing else to do there on a Saturday except go to a football game. So that's what they're going to be doing. So I can tell you right now, going to be a raucous crowd. I think that's a game that comes down to the last second. Hopefully it's on the foot of Mata trying to win the game. But if it's going the other way, it could be unfortunate. But I have that a 3-point game either way. But I'm going to be realistic here, and I'm going to say a 2-1 stretch here so that I'm not going way too far out of the line here. So I'm going to go 7-2 so far. Anthony, are you 7-2 or 6-3?
6-3 right now.
All right, and Bryson is 8-1. So looking at the final 3 guys, obviously have their work cut out. They're at home against Utah. They're on the road at Kansas at the Jayhawks, and then they're home against Oklahoma State. Bryson, I see you shaking your head there, man. Are you worried about this stretch?
This is the toughest one. This is the toughest stretch on their schedule, and it just so happens to be the last 3 games, trying to prove it, their worth, trying to stay within a college football playoff range. I have them going, unfortunately, 1-2. I think they can steal one of those 2 home games, maybe against Utah, just because I think that talent-wise, Oklahoma State's probably a little bit more on the higher end than Utah is. Utah is always one of the most physical teams in college football, though. They always have one of the best defenses. They're always really well coached, and they know how to beat teams even when they aren't supposed to. Like Utah is a really good football program. Kansas coming off one of the best years of that program's history, and this will be a game played in Arrowhead Stadium. So you've got where the Chiefs play, got all those fans there. It's going to be a packed house. It's going to be a really fun environment for that game. And then finishing off against Oklahoma State, that's a brutal stretch for this team.
Yeah.
I'm going 1-2. Probably with a win against Utah and finishing off with 2 straight losses.
Fair enough, man. The only thing I'll throw out there is you got to think that last game, that's likely the game. If Bryson, looking at your rankings here, obviously you have them 8-1 going into this. So if they were to go into that game, 9-1 against Utah, 9-2 against Kansas, they have to win that final game if they're going to punch their ticket into the playoff. And even then it might not be enough, but it very well could be enough. Anthony, you have them at 6-3, man. Are they at least going to punch a decent bowl game here?
They're going. I've seen them going 3-0 over the stretch right here. I think they get to midway. They get about 2/3 of the way done with the season, and you look at the record. They're around 6-3, maybe 7-2, and they're like, boys, Deion sits the guys down. It's like we need a push. We need one hell of a push, and that's the thing I didn't see last year. Whether it came to the end of the season, the end of games, this team just couldn't finish. Even if they were up big, they had a really tough time hanging on the leads and closing out games. I think if they're really going to want to, put forth their best football, their brand of football, this kind of Deion's brand of football, they're going to go out there, they're going to win these final 3 games and really really stick it to the committee. We're like, we have 3 losses, but at the same time, look who we just beat in the run that we're on. I feel like that's the way that they're able to sneak in, maybe with the 12, 11 right there, or at the very least, they're going to get a really good bowl game. One of the things that I saw from Deion, and one of the big reasons he was able to turn Jackson State around, was because he found how to win games, and he found how to win consistently. If they're down, if they're up, whatever the recipe was in game, they're going to finish it. And they also finished out seasons really well there. I feel like that's the kind of energy that he's going to bring. I think now that you have the team, everyone there for a truly full offseason too. Going into year 2, you're going to have just a better relationship with everyone in there. And he's going to be a little bit more of that motivational figure, especially towards the tail end of the season.
Anthony, I can't believe you had these boys coming in 6-3 and then you went 3-0 in the final 3. But hey, I like what you're saying. You defended your case, so I will give you that. I'm going to go ahead and call them 2-1 here because I think they have to make a push here, but I don't think they can win all 3 of these games. Bryson pointed it out, man, that Utah team, one of the most physical teams, one of the most well-coached teams in all of college football. Luckily, you have them at home, so I think there is that shot there to get that win. Going to be close. Kansas, Bryson, both you guys, that's a tough game, absolutely a tough game on the road. But if this team is who we think they're going to be, they should walk in there and be ready to show the world we here. And, we're not coming no more. We're here. Yeah. Right? You know what I'm saying? So hopefully that's a game they can win there, man. And then Oklahoma State, like Jesus. That's just another tough one. I don't know which game as of right now. I need to see the final rosters once the season rolls around here, but I think they lose one of those and then they have 2 close ones with the other 2, find a way to win and punch their ticket to a solid, 10 and, 9-3 ish record. And hopefully it's enough to punch them into a game, a playoff. I don't know if it will be, but I do think it's enough to put them in a very nice bowl game